What's up, community? I wanted to drop in today for a quick moment and add on to this series that we've been in called Permission to Think. And in this series, I'm just kind of sharing a few things from my own experience and how my journey in atheism has been exactly that. It's been a journey that's been a permission to think, a permission to critically engage my life in the world around me. And so far, we've talked about my physical health, physical transformation of going from over 580 pounds to now right at 200 pounds. We've talked about somewhat of a financial transformation, just deeply steeped in some superstitions that I had. Not necessarily religious, but some definitely so. But superstitions that I had about the world, and was able to transform and continue to transform my financial life. But on this one, I want to talk about how how atheism actually saved my marriage. So before I jump in this statement, I want before I jump into this conversation, I want to remind you, make sure you like the video. If you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, this would be a good time to do that. You can also hit the notification bell, and that'll make sure that you get notified. Let's see here. Also, definitely consider joining our Patreon. Consider joining our YouTube membership community, and don't forget to comment, engage, share, all of those great things. Thank you all so much. I appreciate you. Oh yeah, we have merch too. I always forget that we have merch, and we're looking for help. We are looking for volunteers. Some of you have already started filling out the forms. I'm so grateful for you. We're going to start reaching out to people by the middle of next month. But go ahead and start getting those in now, so we'll know those, as we used to say, who labor among us. All right, so let's kind of jump into this real quick. I want to talk about how atheism saved my marriage. And what I really mean here is how it saved my view on marriage, how it redeemed my view on marriage. So I feel like I have to give some color here for you to understand some concepts of this. Coming to America, the movie by Eddie Murphy, the first one, um, heavily impacted my personal ideology about marriage in a way that actually created internal conflict between my view of marriage and what the church or the churches I was a part of proposed as God's view of marriage. And some of you can, if you've ever seen the movie, you already know which scene I'm talking about. It was this scene in the movie that just made the idea of having a submissive wife seem very foolish. I mean, they did a really good job of showing this idea of submission, at least for me as a child at that time. I was like, oh wow, why would I want that? The central character, Akeem, wanted a wife who was an equal and a partner, and that was kind of the way that was my view of marriage. So I there was conflict, from the moment I became a Christian and became married to this idea of marriage. There was a conflict between my view and God's view, and what I realized is that one of these views was outdated and did little to accommodate our elevated understanding of the relationships in deference to some wisdom of an invisible character, while this other view was based on real time observation and experience with the world and aligned with beneficial outcomes. Atheism gave me the confidence to separate myself from the outdated view and fully embrace the idea of marriage as partnership. That's one of the major contributions my ability to critically think has had on my life. This heavily impacted my life, number one, because hey, I'm married. But it's also helps me talk to my children about marriage. It gives me an entirely different and a different perspective that I think is both healthy and helpful. And so, coming to this idea that marriage, was partnership, did several things for me. Number one, marriage was no longer about filling a hole. I completely separated myself from this identity that, or this idea that somehow I was missing a part of me and marriage would fill that. So this idea of, oh, there's the one, or this idea of this is your missing piece, or this is your missing rib. I, completely separated myself from all of that, and it's like, no, this is a person that I'm doing life with. So I'm no longer looking for somebody to fill a hole in me, which can absolutely lead to very toxic and dependency issues. We'll just leave that there. And then marriage was no longer about sex because I no longer have this belief that says you have to be married to have sex. So I'm not trying to get legal booty through sex. That's actually a very childish and petty reason to get married. And I don't think I would have ever realized that as a Christian, that like a while, if your driving reason to get married is just to legally, quote unquote, have sex, then you're really robbing yourself of a wonderful opportunity of partnership. But another conversation, right? And marriage was no longer about curing loneliness. It's like literally, if you see here, marriage all of a sudden gets a purpose that's actually deeper than these shallow, childish things that someone said would be a cure. And I know in a lot of conversations, marriage was presented as this thing that will make you feel better about yourself. Or this thing that will love all the things. You're gonna find somebody who loves everything that's wrong with you, and some I don't know, it's just a whole bunch of stuff, and none of it is actually about building a life or moving forward. So for me, marriage was no longer about a cure to loneliness, and for this point, and marriage was no longer about procreation. So it's like you're not just getting married just so you can have kids. It's like, wow, yikes, we've grown since then, and we should probably act like it. So for me, marriage was about partnership after that. It became a commitment to share the burden of doing life together in whatever direction we may ultimately decide to take as a married couple. But either way, we're doing it together. I'm not necessarily, the head of the household, and I make all the decisions, and you're following my lead. Instead, it's more of a situation where we're two equal people in this together, and we're figuring it out together. So, which means that I was actually able to completely freely separate myself from the idea of superstition. And watch this. It wasn't just because I no longer believed. I'm sorry, I said superstition. I meant submission. I was able to completely separate myself from the idea of submission. And the reason I was able to do this was because it wasn't just that I no longer believed in the concept of original sin. It was also that I firmly disagreed with the very premise of original sin. So much so that I determined that even if God confirmed it to me in person, I would still decline any further invitation to dehumanize another human being because of what somebody else may or may not have done 5,000, 6,000 years ago, which still, even if you said, well, no, what they did was really bad, I still don't care. Like, no, I'm not dehumanizing another human being for that. So, um, for me, marriage now, we're equal partners romantically and professionally. We're both adult human beings, and we strive to treat each other as such. We don't submit, we commit, right? We don't submit, we commit. We're committed to each other, our experience together, and the advancement of that experience as we move forward. And it's like not only was I able to separate myself from this idea of original sin, but I was also able to separate myself from this idea that the opposite sex, and or that someone of another gender or whatever is less than because they're not a man, or they're not an alpha man, or they're not a prototypical man. All of those things just became superstition and nonsense to me. And so, I'm not looking for a partner who's less than me. Why would I choose to marry somebody that I view as less than me? That does not seem as like that's going to lead to healthy places in relationships. And I've seen enough relationships that have done this to tell you that it doesn't. On either side. That's a whole nother conversation, and we'll come to that. But it also broke me away from this idea, which isn't necessarily explicitly stated in any religious text, or maybe it is, but it is accepted by a lot of religious believers, and that is that women are not only somehow less than men, but that women are naturally illogical. That was a superstition that I was no longer willing to participate in. I'm not playing that game. I absolutely believe you're capable of being a logical human being, and I'm gonna treat you such. Why would I birth that type of distrust, in a relationship. Oh, we're equal, but you can't think like I think. Like what? No, that's ridiculous. And so marriage was no longer mysterious for me. That's kind of what critical thinking helped me do. It gets to a place where I separated from a lot of superstitious ideas when it comes to marriage and relationships with people in general, not just romantic relationships, but even familial relationships. But as far as romantic relationships, I know one of the things that I dropped like a bad habit was this idea of five love languages. It's just like, well, wait a minute. One of the most powerful tools of our human species has been language, and the ability to diversify between language. And it has led to such fascinating things as communication and conversation. And so then why would we be in a marriage if something in your marriage is not working the way you want to? Why would you be avoiding using the tool of communication and conversation? So like the only love language your marriage needs is the language that both of you have agreed to speak. And to actually, I think, and I could be wrong about this, but from what I've seen people use love languages to bully each other, to manipulate each other, and to get out of actually communicating and to get out of actually talking. And there are a lot of nuances and complicated reasons as to that, as to why that happens. It's not always just this person is trying to be a jerk, but sometimes life has been so difficult for another person that verbal communication is very difficult for them. But I think marriage is supposed to be one of those safe places where we can kind of unpack that. And the best way to unpack that is, through conversation and communication. As a matter of fact, the one thing that we all encourage marriages on the brink to do is to go see a therapist. And the one thing that the therapist is going to help you do is talk to each other. So, so in my mind, marriage no longer belonged to the realm of religion or superstition. I was finally free from the shame of having practical reasons for marriage and practical expectations in marriage. Um, and so that was major for me. And so now my wife and I feel like we have a healthy marriage. We have a wonderful marriage. We can talk about things. We can get upset about things. We can tell each other we're upset about things. And there is no idea of like, oh no, you don't love me anymore or anything like that, because we really do the work to kind of pull our marriage up out from our former childish superstitions. I mean, we don't even say that in a way to beat ourselves up. It's just the way. Like, no, it's growth. We're growing together. That's one part of the things of doing life together is growing together. So that's my little spiel on how atheism saved my marriage. On this topic, my wife and I actually do have a few passion projects that we've been working on for a little bit over a year, and I've been struggling with this. And so here's another opportunity. I may create a poll and get some questions on this, but I've been struggling. I don't know if we just want to write these as books, like one of these we've already written as a book. If we just want to write them as a book, if we want to turn them into workbooks, if we want to turn them into courses or workshops, we don't really know. But these are passion projects that we already have like built out. Like it's insane, right? But one is marriage as partnership, which you've heard me mention that concept in this. So we've actually started putting together a book on that and possibly a course on that to kind of give people a new way to approach marriage. But another one is also called the marriage proposal. And this one is where, I actually encourage people, instead of doing the, will you marry me? Hey, let's actually let's actually put together an actual proposal for this marriage. What does this look like? What will our roles look like if there are roles? Who will have responsibility for what? How are we splitting finances? How are we splitting revenue? What's our profit sharing agreement here? But then not only, not only the small things like that, but like, no, what do we want to do with our lives together? And I'm not nearly suggesting that it always has to be this way or that it always has to be some business centric approach, which is how some people are going to see that. But it was just an idea to help people get really clear on what you're expecting from each other. And it's like, yes, you have absolutely every right in the world to critically engage your relationship and treat it like anything else that you would be serious about, you know? And then also the Great Commission, which is another concept that I kind of mentioned in this video. And that's this idea that submission in a relationship is unhealthy outside of the bedroom. Of course. No, I'm just playing. Well, not playing, but but submission as a concept is very harmful in the context of a relationship. And so instead of doing submission, let's try commission, that we're just committed to each other, committed to hearing each other out, committing to reasoning with each other. And if you can't be committed to hearing this person out, why would you trust them in a relationship as a partner? And that's what I like to remind people. Like, when you choose someone to marry, if you're going to be the marriage type, you're choosing a life partner. So you might want to take that a little seriously. Another one is Love Unplugged, where we're going to deal with a certain number of superstitions that are harmful to relationships. So this is literally love unplugged from these superstitious concepts that still have their roots and stuff like love potions and things of that nature. And someone did mention in my comments that, well, love potions do work because there's aphrodisiacs. An aphrodisiac is not a love potion in any shape, fashion, or form. So again, that stuff like that is just reaching. And then lastly, another passion project that falls into the same line of this one is Love for Adults Only. And in that one, we want to make that one a communicator's guide to mature relationships. And again, that's kind of hitting this concept of, instead of you trying to figure out all of these mysterious love languages, why not use the language you've already spent your whole life learning and is likely a language that your spouse already speaks, and so that you already have some agreement. And then we want to share some exercises and things in that. But anyway, I'd love to hear what you think about that in the comments. I'm going to go ahead and wrap this up now. But of course, please do not forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, share, comment, do all of that good stuff, because I read them. And then as well, consider joining our Patreon community, our YouTube membership community, and don't just stop there. Consider volunteering to help us really nurture and cultivate the community that is being connected onto this channel. Help us actually listen to what people want. Help us actually build healthy conversations on our online platforms, and help us evolve to that place where we can create some offline resources and offline gatherings for non-believers, skeptics, people who are deconverting, and people who are just trying to figure life out and explore and just do life together. All right, that's all I have for now. Thank you so much for your time. And until next time, keep rising, stay progressive, and stay beautiful. What else you got to lose?